My name is Chie Matsumoto. I'm a part-time organizer for Tokyo Contingent Workers Union.
And what's the rally about today, and what are the issues facing contingent workers?
We're actually asking the government to revise Japan's dispatch law. Dispatch law involves all these workers who are dispatched to different companies, say Panasonic, Mitsubishi Fuso, Nissan. These are mainly in the manufacturing sectors, and what it was that since the September's Lehman Brothers shock, all these exporters, Japan's exporters, they were hit really hard financially, and so they had to cut labor and labor costs, and so all these dispatch workers who work in short term, like 3 months for instance, they were cut and they were dismissed unfairly before their contract was terminated. And most of these people live in company dormitories too, and so they were, at the same time they lost their jobs, they were kicked out of the company dormitories, and so some of those victims are going to be speaking tonight.
I see. And how many workers are we talking about?
We're talking about 130,000 or 140, more than 140,000 people.
So that's a lot of workers.
Yes, and especially these are mainly young workers who are in 20s and 30s, and of course there's going to be a lot of older people going to be working in the industry, but mainly right now the majority is younger generation.
Well, Japan has a labor shortage apparently, so why aren't they treating these workers better?
Well, I think it's mainly because right now, because of the manufacturing sectors, manufacturing companies like electronics or automakers, they are trying to, they lost a lot of profits, of course, since the Lehman Brothers shock, and so they're trying to cut, the first thing they cut is the personnel cost, and that's what's happening. And in the meantime, they're trying to recover their business. And what's interesting is that they're actually rehiring, and that's the interesting part. But they're rehiring, and at the same time, they're rehiring the ones who they're already dismissed. And so this is kind of the irony. But a lot of the people who are already cut the end of last year, they're still unemployed, and there's no other jobs, and they're trying to struggle. And a lot of times, a lot of the people who were dismissed at the end of the year, they came to this place, actually, this park, and they put up the tent, and it's called Tent City, and there were more than 500 people who came here to find a place to stay, to sleep, or to eat. They were looking for meals and everything. But after that, a lot of them actually applied for welfare, and they will receive that, but it really isn't, it's not a forever deal. And so in the meantime, of course, they need to work and they want to work. And so they were also at the same time trying to look for a job, but there isn't enough. And they go to these unemployment offices, and there are supposed to be a lot of jobs offered, but it's packed with people, and you have to wait in line to get to a computer and to look for a job.
And what are these companies unionized where these workers have been hired, the contingent workers?
Well, the fact is that all these contingent workers are dispatched to different sections of companies, and different companies too, subsidiaries especially. And so that's why it was very difficult to organize, and they work in short terms, like from a month to even a day to weeks to months, and maybe the longest 3 months. And so it is very hard to organize, but as soon as they lost their jobs, they were looking for some place to help them get their jobs back, or to support themselves financially. And that's why they came to places like Contingent Workers Union or General Workers Union.
What about Rengo and the other unions? Have they taken up the cause?
Well, actually, they have introduced a certain measure that actually they established a policy. They introduced a policy to help irregular workers, non-regular workers who are not full-time, but their measures haven't really taken effect.
And what about the role of the Democratic Party, the new government? Have they said that they're going to defend these workers?
They did. They promised. They promised to secure jobs or introduce jobs or create more jobs or provide more financial support to these people. They're going to be speaking tonight, so we'll see what they will say.
So, what is the general situation in Japan? I know the world economic crisis has been devastating, highest unemployment in 70 years in the United States, and many of the advanced countries, capitalist countries, are in tremendous crisis. What's the economic and political situation in Japan in 3 minutes or less? Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it's very interesting because the economic analysts, they were saying that they see an improvement in exports, especially, and some companies, like today, I think Honda announced first time in their earnings went into black, and first time in a couple of quarters, I think. And so they are actually showing profits. But the thing is, it doesn't necessarily directly mean that they're going to take back these workers. They're still trying to recover fully, and so I think it's going to take time, and then that's what analysts are saying. And what's interesting is that they might cut more people, and the unemployment rate in Japan is going to hit like 6% by the end of the year, and that's really crucial for us, Japan's workers, and especially for those of us who haven't had full-time jobs, especially the young people.
And why don't you talk about your case, what happened to your struggle at the newspaper?
I used to work for a major Japanese newspaper, which was considered leftist.
Asahi Shimbun?
Asahi Shimbun, yes. I was working full-time, but they treated me like a freelance, and that's what they said in court too. And we went all the way up to the Supreme Court, but we lost, or the court dismissed our case. And so we were already fired by then, so there was nothing we could do to go back to the company. But I don't think this doesn't necessarily mean that I gave up on the struggle, because I think the problem still exists, and it is true. Like in Japan overall, they say that 1 in every 3 Japanese workers between ages of, I think, 20 to 35 or 45 is a temporary workers. Yeah, temporary worker. And I was like that. And in the newspaper industry, it's exactly the picture that we have. We recently did a survey, and so ever since right after I got fired and I lost the case, I actually joined a newspapers federation, newspapers unions federation, and the reason is, of course, that's where the problem exists. And so I had to fight I needed to cooperate, or they needed to cooperate with me to improve the labor situation inside the newspaper industry.
And this issue of temporary workers has become systemic in the whole economy. That means that the future of young workers is really bad now, and for young people in Japan?
I think if this system or this law exists the way it is, yes, it's going to be a problem. But that's why here we came together to demand the government to revise the law.
Is there a revitalization of the Japanese labor movement?
I think actually no. I think it is. There is a revitalization, or it's coming back in a different way and in a different style. Like I think the Contingent Workers Union is a very good example of that. It's a prototype. Just because the problems that workers in Japan, especially young workers in Japan, face is completely different from what it used to be 50 years ago. A lot of young kids, a lot of young people.
Is this the Freeders?
Huh?
The Freeders?
The Freeders. Well, no, actually, it'll be temp workers right now, yeah, majority. Because once they lose their jobs, then they can't survive, yeah. They lose their house at the same time, and that's why there's a housing issue too. But the work is directly related to their livelihood. And that's why the union here, they help not necessarily the labor issues, but also in the life, in everyday life, how union members can survive, how they can relate with others, because they